Interviewing experts within your organisation can be one of the most effective ways to create authentic, differentiated, high-value content in many different formats. Listen on to find out more about thought leadership content and positioning expert interviews at the core of your marketing strategy. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximise your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and this week we've got a fantastic episode planned for you, and I'm joined by a co-host. So Hayley Evans heads up our marketing operations and client account management at Content 10x, and Hayley's going to be a co-host on this episode, and we're going to be sharing with you the power of expert interviews. So it's the start of a series, and we're going to talk about how interviewing experts in your organisation can fuel an entire content strategy. So we're really, really excited for this series. So Hayley, welcome to the Content 10x podcast for the first time. You've been working on it for loads, and now you're actually here in front of the mic, in front of the camera. So I'll let you give a little bit of an intro, Hayley.
Yeah, it's been lovely. So it's lovely to be on it. It's done a year of working behind the scenes of it, so it's nice to be in the kind of front of it. So yeah, I'm heading up our operations and client account manager here at Content 10x. Part of my role is working on strategy with our clients and our 360 approach that we have here. So with our content strategy, our creation, and then through to our repurposing. And we all know that great content repurposing starts with great content creation. So I'm really excited to share this series with you. So one aspect of my role includes suggesting expert interviews with our clients. We find that that's a really, really strong content creation. It's very, very rich. And part of my role here is actually hosting and facilitating those expert interviews with our clients too. So I'm really, really happy to share how that works for us and share you guys with insights too.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not have possibly considered doing this episode in this series without you, Hayley, because you're such an expert in this. So let's shine a light on that expertise and talk through. Specifically with this topic, if you listen to episode 322, our second to last episode with Andy Crestodina, we talked about why it's so important to create content that goes narrow and deep, and how we need to have expertise, richness, detail within our content, and really make sure that it is differentiated. So B2B thought leadership content, we want it to be quality and differentiated. And then I followed up in the last episode on the podcast about creating content that AI can't create. So building on the conversation with Andy Crestodina, and we were talking about if you are trying to compete with AI and AI can do just as good, if not a better job than you, then that's not the kind of content you want to create. You want it to be unique. You want it to be about individuals and people and show expertise. So we feel really passionately at Content 10x that expert interviews, so interviewing experts in your organisation, really do tick so many boxes in terms of that high quality, expert-led, undifferentiated content that focuses on people. And that's why we're doing this entire series on expert interviews and the power of them. So I've said expert interviews a number of times. Let's just dig into what we mean by that. So Hayley, let's chat through. What do we mean when we say an expert interview?
Yeah, it's really interesting. An expert interview, we really mean bringing the forefront of some unique client stories, customer stories, your team stories to the forefront. It provides such engaging information. So I guess let's just run through of the who, the what, and the how of the expert interview. So who in your organization could be an expert? And quite often there's a misconception that we're just talking about C-suite team members. The kind of top management level, they're the real experts, but that's certainly not the case. We see so many experts within an organization. So it could be your functional team, your technical team, frontline workers, anybody that you think within your organization has a really great story to tell, to shine, and just to highlight, and especially in the B2B industry. And what do we mean by an expert interview? We mean a video recorded interview. So you'll see this as me and Amy being recorded too. But, there is an option to record audio only if your team doesn't like being on camera, that's for sure. And we'll go into that in detail later on this series. As Amy mentioned before, we're doing a 4-part series, so you'll hear much more in-depth information later. But these video recorded episodes, so you can either do them remote, as Amy and I are having our kind of conversation today, or you can do them in person. Both work just as well. The most important thing is to make sure that you're getting those stories of your organization to the forefront. And how can you run those? So as I mentioned before, I run these directly for our clients at Content 10X. So you can utilize an agency like ourselves, and we provide expertise, and we can interview the guests directly, or we can help facilitate it, or you can run them directly in-house. It just really depends on what you have within your organization's availability. So what we make sure that we do within Content 10X is just really, really support you all with the planning to then repurpose that great quality content. And again, we'll go into that into a future episode too. And the planning, we're going to cover that in episodes to come, because the strategy behind your expert interview is absolutely everything, wouldn't you say, Amy? The interview is essentially just the start of the content, is the creation of it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that you hit on so many important points there in terms of the identification of who the experts are. And I know that in the next episode, when we do talk about planning and talk to you about lots of tips and tricks and ways to make sure that you plan the expert interviews, we'll touch the overall strategy. So choosing who in alignment with your content strategy and the pillars and what you want to be known for and how important that is. And yeah, as you said, Hayley, we recommend video. We're going to dig into that a lot more, but it doesn't have to be. There's a lot that can be gained from interviewing, camera shy people who perhaps don't want to go on video, but you can get so much content. But as you said, the big thing is that there's so much content that then comes. So it's really, you've hit that record button and you've done the recording, you've done lots of prep. And then that's just the start, because then you have all of this really unique content. And as we said, it's going to be authentic because it's coming from your experts. It's going to be building that thought leadership aligned with the pillar. So we're coming on to that soon in terms of the strategy. And it'll create connection. It's expert-led, people-focused content. But then you repurpose these interviews. So we will do an entire episode on this, but to get you excited about the prospects of this, you can take these expert interviews, and it could be a long form video. You could then create some short form social videos from these interviews. You've got a podcast episode right there because you've got the video and the audio. You can extract some of the key stories, and you can create image carousels and infographics. You might have one blog post, you might have many blog posts. You can have articles for your site, you can have articles for other sites as well. The list goes on, and we'll go into a lot of detail, but they really do power an entire content strategy and plan for you if they're done really well. So in the episodes to come, we're going to cover how to prepare. That's going to be a whole episode just on the preparation, how to run them as well, and how to repurpose, as I just said. We talked about the experts, like who they could be. You might even be doing these interviews in a sense and not really realise the power of the content. I think you've seen that, haven't you, Hayley, where like some of the clients, when you've spoken to them, maybe they didn't even realise that they were already on the cusp of doing these kinds of expert interviews anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so many occasions where we've been working through strategy with a client and they're already sat on this amazing, great content that they could be using, but it's not seen as content that they think is useful, as at the forefront of their strategy. So this is where we really love to bring and shine a light to it, because most often than not, our clients are already having this content, having these expert interviews. So for example, it could be a conference that you've had, a specific keynote discussion that you've had that actually could have been brought to the front. It could be a panel discussion with multiple members of your team, maybe a customer story interview. So you could look at case studies, for example, a webinar that you've recently hosted. You could have had a frontline worker that's, joined on your webinar, that's giving a really intense discussion, really niche down context. That in itself. There's also a misconception that an expert interview needs to be one-on-one. There's so many times where I have hosted some expert interviews where it's not one-on-one. We have multiple people within similar and opposite roles giving their opinions. And it also might be a suite of the team. You might have, a whole section of your team that brings across all of these really interesting points. And you already might be hosting these as roundtable discussions. So it's really, really worthwhile considering all of those, smaller conversations and larger conversations that you're already having within your organization that you could utilize as part of your content strategy. Because, as we're very, very passionate in repurposing, we're also very, very passionate in utilizing what you're already doing within your organization. What we'll be doing in the next episodes is just really bringing these to the forefront, but I guess having you look at this with content in mind this time that you may not have been looking at before.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope that in this episode alone, we've opened your mind up to the power of these expert interviews and how this could work. You're going to have to listen to the whole rest of the series for all the other tips in terms of the prep, the planning, the repurposing, etc. So in the next episode, that's where we're going to focus on the preparation, on the planning of these episodes. So here's a little snippet from the episode to come.
Please, please, please share the interview questions with them ahead of time. There is nothing worse than getting somebody on a call who has no preparation of it whatsoever. They're flustered, they're not prepared, they don't get to bring their point of view. You might have ideas, they might bring their own ideas. They're very likely to bring their own ideas to the table, and give them their own time to do their own research, create their own bullet point lists, meet with them, share with them. The most important thing of any content that is the upfront planning and preparation. The more you plan, the more you prepare, the better the content output will be in the long run.
Okay, so I hope you are excited for the next episode. We also have a treat for you as well. So we've got a fantastic guide that you can go and grab for free, which is our impactful interview guide. And in it, you will learn about how to deliver your message powerfully if you are being interviewed. We'll share some top recommendations, even in terms of the tech setup, as well as how to prepare and how to get the most out of an interview. So if you are being interviewed or you are going to follow our advice here and interview experts in your organization, this guide is going to be super useful to have for anybody who's doing an interview. So head to content10x.com/interview-guide, and we'll put the link to this in the show notes as well. So if you're listening to this in an app now, just go down to the show notes and click the link and go and get a copy of that guide. It's super useful for doing these expert interviews. Also, at the end of the series, we're going to do an FAQ episode as well. So if you have any questions from this episode, or as you go on and listen to the future episodes, please do send them over to us. So email info@content10x.com and send over any questions that you have, and we make sure that we'll cover those in that final wrap-up FAQ episode. So all that's left to say really is thank you so much, Hayley. Thank you for your contributions to this episode. It's been really good. I'm looking forward to recording the future episodes now.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well.
If you enjoyed this episode and you like this format as well, please do, as always, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that in whichever app you're listening to. Go and leave us a review. Otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this episode, and Hayley and I will catch you in the next one.